Hey everyone, I think we're going to give a couple minutes for a few more folks to join. Colby, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, no problem at all. Thanks for having me back to do a little discussion, I suppose.
This is it's pretty exciting. Was just messaging back and forth with Sam Wheeling.
Oh yeah, yep.
So, are you at home or are you in the office?
I'm actually in the office today, just in one of our little side conference rooms.
Yeah, it's those kinds of things seem to be getting used a lot more. Everyone has a private office now.
Oh yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go ping the rest of the group on the Slack and let them know that the Zoom call's open.
Hey, Colby.
Oh.
Thanks for being willing to jump on today. I'm looking forward to this, and I know everybody else will be
it's
really,
no problem at all.
Yeah, happy to hear from somebody who's been through it and is now in the field doing your thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think this is going to be super valuable. So thank you.
Hopefully so.
Yeah. So is the whole BlueFrame team in the office yet, or just a few of you?
Most of us are in the office. There's still a few who are working from home, but I think we're back in, except for maybe 3 or 4 of us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Great.
So trying to chug along here.
Yep.
Colby. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, good.
How's it going?
Oh, doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Long time no see.
Oh yeah, it's been quite a while. It seems like, even though it's only been probably right around a year at this point.
Yeah. How are things going?
Going really well. Going well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Started out, not doing integral, but now I'm working actually with our AI team a little bit, working on a project with our partner Musco Lighting.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
What tech stacks are you working in?
We're using Yi, the PHP framework,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's all kind of wrapped into a Docker container right now. So that's what I'm kind of running my local environment off of. Doing a little bit of JavaScript still. Use Vue.js a little bit with our web app, but most I'm working in the Yi framework.
Cool. Doing a lot of backend stuff.
Oh yeah, a lot of API stuff is what I've been into here lately.
Very cool. Very cool.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun.
That's did you ever work any more on your project, on your final project?
Not as much as I wanted to. I've kind of been once I got here trying to catch up with all the tech stack here and getting into our CMS, which is pretty expansive. So I've just been head on into this and actually doing a little bit of side work with a buddy of mine. He asked me to help out with some stuff. So my personal project's kind of fallen off a bit.
That's the way it works sometimes. The reason I asked is I was like, I'm missing baseball, and so
it's tough.
Yeah, your app idea was really cool.
I hope to get back into it at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how they open back up, how things affect. I mean, if you had your app out, it would have been affected.
Oh yeah, big time.
Can't travel. Can't map out your travel plans and go to the different parks.
I think that the Korean baseball organization that they're showing on ESPN, I think they did like virtual fans once, or like put like cardboard cutouts in stands, but I think they have full fans now.
It's pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
Cool. It looks like we got a few more, Nick.
All right, good news. I think we can go ahead and get started. We had a couple people I know who were on the way getting back from lunch. So Colby, normally how we have done our in person, we would have been doing our bring lunch in and everyone have together. We've been trying to do our best to to reassemble that remotely. So the crew was
Gotcha.
getting some vinaigrette today.
Okay.
So trying to support those local restaurants.
Oh yeah.
So well, cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna do just a little quick hello to everyone, and then I think Katie's gonna introduce you and tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll hand it over to you there. But
All right.
yeah, Colby, thanks a lot for joining us. Really glad to have you here. The crew is in so week 12 of 13. We had a 1-week extension because we had a little interruption in the middle of boot camp here. So they are diving in on final projects. I think just hit a code freeze and going to be doing a little internal demo later today. But getting ready, next week's our last week, and then getting ready for demo day and diving into a career. So excited to hear about your experience in boot camp and now being out for a year. So I'll hand it over to Katie to talk a little bit more about you.
All right.
Yeah, welcome, Colby. Welcome, current boot camp. We're really excited to hear from Colby today because it's always really valuable to learn from somebody who is sort of where you want to be. And so he's going to talk a little bit, hopefully, about some of his journey, what he's doing now. Colby has, much like a lot of you, a very non-linear path to software development. He studied pre-dentistry, so he wanted to be a dentist, and then got into banking, and then ended up in software development bootcamp, just like you guys. So now he's with BlueFrame Technology, which I'll let him share a little bit about what they're all about. And he just shared a few minutes ago that he's now working on APIs and some stuff with AI. So he's gotten to continue to grow and develop his skill set and experience. So thanks, Colby, and I will let you take it away.
All right. Thank you all for having me to kind of talk with you all today. As was mentioned before, I work for BlueFrame Technology. Let me see here. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. So this is just kind of a little PowerPoint here that we've kind of put together for some of our clients when we go to where our sales team goes, and we'll try to sell our product at conference events or school to school. This is kind of something we'll just give a little introduction. This is who we are. Founded in 2015 with about 4 employees, but now we have 700 plus clients, 24 employees here. And I will go and show the website real quick because I just like to go ahead and give the brief overview before we get into too much of the specifics here. Basically, what we do is we provide a streaming option for smaller schools and conferences, trying to recreate the ESPN feel for their broadcasts for all their sports, basically anything from swimming and diving, baseball, you name it, we probably have streamed something similar. We even have a few smaller clients that are radio stations. We've had some funeral homes and churches now add on to our service since COVID has kind of interrupted some of those in-person events. We're trying to get that out there to get that sense of community along with not really being in the same room with each other. See here who we are. This is the team down here. Ben Kant and Darren Brown are the 2 founders, CEO and CTO. Actually, we deal quite a bit with them on a day-to-day basis. It's not kind of a bigger company where you don't really see those guys or only get a minute here and there. If we have a question or something big pops up, usually they're available to kind of help out. I've been working more with Ben here lately. Ben has been in contact with our partner, Musco. They're a lighting company, but they're also interested in our AI for recording broadcasts and things like that. They deal with bigger facilities. They'll have maybe 3 to 4 ballparks, and they're all trying to get the broadcast recorded and don't really have the production capabilities of having somebody produce each single one. So with this AI solution, we're hoping to allow them to set it up, give them a time frame, and let the camera take care of the rest of it. Our team it's kind of broken up a little bit. I'm working with our CMS team for our content management. Barrett, Fisher, and Brandon, very good points of contact for me. They've been very helpful from growing from leaving the boot camp to where I am now. Still tons of learning each day, tons of questions for each of them, feedback. And one thing that is definitely going to be helpful is Justin's motto of break everything often and as much as you can. The more you break it and you deconstruct it, it's so much easier to learn and dive in that way. That really helped me to grow once I got here, was knowing that breaking something locally and trying to fix it is going to be even more fixed in the end. Basically, like I find other things broken that wasn't ever the original bug and just make everything a little bit cleaner. As you can see, we've got a pretty small staff, but big in the sense that for a startup, we're getting there little by little. We've got our sales and support staff. Mark is actually in Colorado. He deals with a lot of our schools and conferences that are out west. Some people are still here in the office. We have a lot of support staff who will be answering kind of the questions for viewers broadcast, which sometimes those questions get turned back around onto us, because if it's a bug issue, we're trying to fix it as soon as we can to help out the customers. Back to our products that we offer. This is the map of kind of who we service right now. As you can see, we're kind of all over and constantly growing still. We've got a few new conferences that we're trying to sign on. So each of these people will probably have a website that we'll try to integrate our players in. If not, we have been making conference apps and websites for them. So if enough schools and a conference come up to us, we will put it into an app, put it onto the web, try to get their exposure as much as we can to help those guys out. So our quantity of broadcasts keeps growing year to year. Started with about 311, September 2019, 5,282. So the more people we get, the more broadcasts are going out, and people seem to keep enjoying the product. We'll produce more and more each year, it seems like. We're trying to get as many schools to do all of their sports through us as possible. Some will stream just championships maybe, but again, this is supposed to be a end-to-end digital network solution. So our app, or our main product, is the production truck. What that's going to do is allow them to go in and gives you graphic overlays, allows you to switch between different cameras. We also have the streaming service attached to that, where you can stream through us. We'll handle all of the video uploading. We will record those. We can even have ad monetization thrown in there if they wanted to throw ads into their videos as well. Here's a little bit of an overview of Production Truck. The graphics, those are going to be built with JavaScript, HTML, just kind of some basic stuff going on there. And we've got those for all kinds of things. Like we have different baseball scoreboards, fielding overlays, anything that ESPN has done as a graphic, we've tried to replicate so that it can be used and give that same feel to these smaller colleges that may not have the money to get the big production truck, like the actual truck that's going to come in and record a 16 camera broadcast. Content management. This is really more where I've been working since I've been with the company. We have this whole system where you can set up your site, your customer broadcasts, how you want everything to be set up, your defaults, so that if you have, so if a school has a student who's going to record the broadcast, their AD or the SID, whoever's in charge of their kind of digital for their athletics, will go ahead and set up their defaults. So all that the student has to do to record it is open up the Production Truck app, hit start, and away they go. Try to make it as easy as possible for the end viewer. This is where that E comes in. It's a PHP framework that we use here. It really makes the APIs pretty simple once you kind of dive in. I know that it was kind of something I struggled with in the boot camp, and just so happens to turn out that that's what I'm dealing with mostly now. So it's kind of a strange little thing to happen, but it's a lot of fun once you dive into something as large as this, because our content management service, everybody who streams through us has a site. Maybe they're attached to a customer that's only a site only. It could be a conference. And so when you're dealing with these back end kind of things, you have to worry about permissioning these people for, do they have access to the site? Do they have access to produce? Do they have access to delete these things? And with everything kind of interconnecting, you always are doing checks for roles. You're doing checks for if they even have the role within a certain site's access to do certain things. And it's really interesting how we've kind of built the objects in the back end to be easily sortable, as well as give us all of this optionality to stop people at each individual step for whatever their role is determined with the site. Let me see here. So these kind of all tie in together. Content organization, this is just basically, we have a few different ways that we can get people to have their content on their own websites. We either have a widget, which is this kind of little area here, and it's our player. It's built in to pull in all of their broadcasts, and that's customizable as well on our content management service. So this is yet another thing that's in the content management that we can send out to our customers, and they can either plug and play themselves, or we can build a site for them to put that on. It's not shown here, I don't think, but we also have a web app, which is going to replicate our app's functionality as much as it can for a website for the site, if they wanted to have all of their content available for whoever wanted to watch it online. We also build apps. We're dealing with Apple, Android, Amazon Fire, anything that the client requests, we're going to try to get to them as quickly as possible. Another part of my job is QA and testing. So I've had to spend a lot of times looking at when we do app updates and things like that, looking in to make sure our functionality is still in there, as well as the branding for each individual school looks as it's supposed to for the apps. Those are actually undergoing a change right now. We're actually moving to Swift for our apps so that we can kind of deploy a little bit quicker. So those have undergone quite a bit of testing here lately that's bounced back and forth between the app developers and us in the QA team as well at this point. We also offer TV apps, which is another reason we're going to Swift, so that we can try to deploy the TV and the iOS side by side, get those kind of looked at similarly and pushed out as quickly as possible. We obviously offer client viewer support because with all of the different technologies that we offer, with it'd be the production truck, which we offer in both Mac and Windows, any of our apps, or any of the purchases when people are trying to watch pay-per-view content, any and all bugs that could happen will usually go through our support team first. And then it'll get kicked over to either test to kind of test a little further to see what's going on, or it'll go straight to the developer who worked on that if they may have a lead already on what may be causing the bug that's in the system. Branding and network ID, this is more for our sales team. Anytime that a new school conference joins on, we actually have some in our support team who will do designs for scoreboards for them, kind of see what they're thinking. That first point of contact who kind of gets the information we'll need, and will build us the assets like the images and network logos, things like that the schools will be using. We already have automated captioning within our system. So that's one other thing that we kind of take a heavy look at. We got to see to make sure that the captions are in time with our videos, stamping, make sure that it's actually correctly getting the audio and stuff like that. So that's another thing that Test has been kind of digging into lately, making sure everything works there, because we work with schools out in California and with the CCAA, and California has a lot of strict rules around access for everyone. So closed captioning, all of those kind of things that may not be as stringent elsewhere. California wants to make sure that all that stuff is available, and anybody who wants to watch or participate in these kind of videos can. So we are overhauling, well, not overhauling, but we're making sure everything in our system works with captioning and any sort of assisted digital devices. We also recently implemented official video review. This is going to tie in with our production truck. We have the main production truck that's going to run off of either your Windows or Mac computer, but the video review will be a separate app that you can attach to a iPad or a tablet of some kind, and it will have all of the camera feeds from production truck on there, but you can zoom, play, pause, kind of help the officials to look to see if the shot went in before the shot clock went off, anything like that. We're trying to get people a cheaper option for official video review without spending, tons of money on one of those expensive monitors that, the pro referees and things like that use. And it's come a long way since it first started, but a lot of people are using it. CCAA was kind of our first test group, and they've had a lot of good positive feedback from it. Another thing we're implementing is cloud clipping. What we're hoping to do with this with our players is allow a viewer or SID, whoever is kind of viewing the broadcast, to take out a highlight, and you can download it, and then you can share that out over social media. And the AI team eventually, hopefully, we can figure out a way to maybe dynamically and automatically get those kind of clips that you want, like train the data to see maybe a dunk or something like that, and we can pull those clips out automatically based on what the camera is seeing, hopefully. But that's on the roadmap, but we'll see how quickly we can get that implemented. Let me see. A lot of this stuff is more for just the rest of that was just kind of, stop sharing my screen. The rest of that slideshow was basically just going to be the sales kind of aspect of, here's how the money side of it's going to work, but that's probably not as much of interest to you guys. Day to day here, pretty much the same. It's not too strict. There's not a lot going on. We only have about one meeting a day, which is our stand-up. We do that at 2 o'clock every day. Pretty basic. Everybody just kind of comes in, asks for help on any bugs they have, just checking in on everybody, seeing where they're at. See what else here. We usually start somewhere between 7 and 9, just kind of what time you get in here, 8-hour days. But for me, it's usually not just a straight 8 hours. I usually go home and we'll have something that I'm thinking about from the day before, write down some notes or fix a small bug that just pops into your head. I don't know how, if all of you were like me that kind of have a non-linear path into it or have maybe had a little experience before, but the more you're thinking about it and the more you're working in it day in and day out, it's going to be in your head as soon as you get home. Like if you have a problem, it's going to follow you a little bit, but not in a bad way, more of a, oh man, I wish I could figure this out. Like I know I can figure it out, and then it'll just click sometimes, and then that's when you grab the computer, grab a notebook, kind of write it down and then work on it the next day. But it's, yeah, it gets ingrained in you once you get into the job. It's just a building process slowly, but it's a lot of fun to continue to learn once you get out of the boot camp. Another thing that we do for kind of a day-to-day thing, but every week we have a weekly meeting on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. It's separated out into blocks for the month. One day is going to be the devs' turn to talk. One time it's the ownership's turn. And we just kind of give everybody a point of view for what our department's been working on. So that way everybody in the company kind of gets a feel for where we're at, where we're going, what's, going to affect each person's job based on what's coming down the pipeline. It's always kind of lighthearted and fun. Usually there's beer involved. Something, I think we call it Port 4 is what we call it weekly. And it's, like I said, it's just a good way to know where the company's at, where everybody's doing, and keep tabs on, everything going on, since we are kind of a smaller, tight-knit company. I know that I already mentioned I don't know if I mentioned the tech stack. I know I was talking with Justin. I don't know if everybody's here for it. But we, for the CMS, we're using a PHP, and the framework we're using is called Yi. That's mainly what I work in. It's also some JavaScript thrown in there, as well as I've dealt with Vue.js since I've been out. Not as much. That's really just for our web app. I added in a mobile navigation bar for our web app, which pretty simple coming straight out of the boot camp, since I had worked in Vue with the boot camp. So that was pretty beneficial to get me kind of started into the business here. But now that I've moved on past that, I'm working in our CMS, which is, if you introduce a bug into it, you're going to hear about it pretty quickly with how many clients we service. But we have, the way we kind of track it is we have somebody who controls everything going in and out, and you'll push up your changes to your branch. You'll try to merge it into our dev branch. If it works on dev, it'll get moved into production eventually, but dev is really going to get looked at by our test team to make sure that everything's functioning as it should. All the roles are held as they should, and it's sometimes a slow process, but that's one big difference from boot camp. Boot camp, you're just pushing changes into yourself, and you're kind of that point of contact to control the merge in, make sure there's no merge conflicts. But once you get out and they're dealing with more people pushing merges in at once, it's kind of a roadblock of everybody's trying to get their merges in, does one conflict with the other, and lot of conversation between you and the rest of your team on what you're doing so that they can prepare around what they're doing as well. I had recently had 2 different branches that I was working on at the same time. Those 2 had a merge conflict with each other because one was branched off of a newer version of master than the other. So just pulling those back in, updating anything, always make sure that when you branch off, master is going to be pulling in master before you start any new branch is always going to be helpful once you get out of once you get into the world of companies and such. Master always needs to be pulled in every time you start a new branch. That's one thing I wish I would have done more of in boot camp, but where it's you by yourself most of the time, it's not something you can really practice there. Let me see. Is there anything else I wrote down here? Kind of had a few notes, just things to go over. Oh, one more thing I want to talk about before I kind of open up for questions was my path once I got out of the boot camp. So once I kind of left the boot camp, I had already been in contact with BlueFrame a little bit towards the last few weeks of the boot camp. I did a lot of networking with, I know we had a networking event that was at Gray Construction once, talked with a bunch of different people there. That was where I had a first point of contact with Darren and another team member here, Richard. And after talking with them, came in and talked with them twice, I think, in the last couple of weeks of the boot camp, and maybe 1 week after the boot camp had ended. And it just seemed like a good fit for me. When I first got hired on, it was kind of
you can get the
contract
$5.55 lunch. You can get fettuccine and a piece of pizza.
Yep. And we see.
Oh, sorry guys, I know.
Oh no. Yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
Oh well, it was kind of contract work. It wasn't a straight salaried position. It was supposed to be 50% QA testing and 50% dev work at the same time. But that I kind of worked through things quickly once I got here. Anytime we had a meeting or one of those 2 o'clock stand-ups where a bug would come up or there was a feature request from support that was kind of a smaller issue that was kind of tedious that the 2 main CMS developers didn't want to get to, I was always, hey, I'll do that. If it's something that I can take a look at that, I'll try to get this done. That's one thing that I really kind of stressed once I got here was anytime somebody didn't want to do something, I at least offered to try to figure it out because that was just more learning experience from what I did. And a few months after that, maybe about 6 months after I got hired, I got moved into a salaried position. I'm doing a little bit more development than I am QA testing now. So it's more 70-30 now, developing quite a bit more than I was to begin with. But it's just getting into a code base, learning it, and growing through it. I can tell a big difference from when I first started trying to do anything from the smallest of add a button to a page to now I have built a new system for our AI team within our CMS. It's called video source scheduling. Each of our, we call it video sources, our automated cameras solutions. So my schedule will give it a date time, which will tell the camera when to start the first of the broadcasts. And we're going to have detection in there to whether if you turn detection on, it will create a new broadcast for each game that it detects ending and beginning. We also have the ability to control when that camera source shuts off. It can either be set dynamically through the expected duration that you set, or you can also have it controlled with that game detection software as well that we're hoping to implement here soon. So if it gets to the end of that expected duration that you've already given it, that game detection will look for when that last game ends, and it won't just cut you off right in the middle of however long you thought it would take. So that solution is going to get sent, and I had to build an API around that model that I built so that our camera system can get all that information back from each of those objects and then use all that information in a relevant way to let it do its thing. And that's working with one of our big partners, the Musco. So it's once you get into a company, it's just kind of finding where you fit, make sure that you're trying to learn as much as you can, and that like continue constantly trying to better yourself and teach yourself new things. But if you just kind of listen to what the boot camp taught you and kind of just keep rolling with everything you learned there, it shouldn't have any problem once you reach the workforce, I wouldn't think. I think that's about it that I've got kind of prepared. So I don't know if that was too long or too short, but I'm willing to answer any questions you all kind of have at this point.
I've actually got a question.
Okay.
Something that we're dealing with now is we're working remotely, obviously. So we're able to kind of ping in Ian or Justin and kind of say, hey, this is something I'm kind of dealing with. Could you look over my code? Could you send me some guidance? As a junior developer going into the workforce, obviously you're still continuing to learn. And I'm assuming you'll be working with some other juniors, some mids, occasionally a senior. What is that process like when you run into a blocker or you get challenged and you get to a point where you're just not sure of the next step? You Googled all you can Google that you know to Google. You've asked the questions to, people that you know around you. Like, what is the next step there?
For us, it's really kind of easy. We're a smaller company and we're all mostly in the same office. I have two devs that I kind of go ask questions to, Brandon and Barrett. Usually what I'll do is if I can't figure something out, I've tried everything that I can. Googling's not helping me any at all. I'll either message them through our Slack to see if they're available. If they are, I'll just go kind of show them what I've got, ask, hey, is there something that I'm missing here? See if there's something that they've ran into before, because once you're into the workforce, you're all kind of working on the same project sometimes. So they may have ran into this issue before and say, oh yeah, I know a quick fix for that. Or at least here, they're very helpful in, okay, let me look at that, kind of talking through it with you, giving that rubber duck to let you work through it yourself, but not completely give you the answer as well.
Cool. I've got a question.
Okay.
Are you working currently in any kind of like agile development frameworks? Do you have sprints? Do you have anything like that?
We don't really have sprints. Right now we're just kind of any new feature we can get. It's not really like time frame. It's just kind of we don't really have like our services, sports to watch. Obviously, we can't stream something that's not going on. So we're trying to implement some new things, and we have a task list, but there's not really a definitive timeline on there. You're just trying to get to your tasks, get them done as quickly as you can. For me, it's they kind of know where I've only been here a year. Some of the tasks may take me a little longer, but we build our tasks and we have in the list, we move them through a process. They're going to be either in work, we have a stuck column, we have QA staging where it's going to get tested. And then once it's approved through QA staging, it'll go to QA approved to wait for Brandon, which is kind of our main point of contact, to pull that in. And once that's pulled in, it will go into our live production on both ours and our partners' CMS services.
Could you also talk a little bit about the interview process and negotiation once you get an offer?
Yeah, the interview process for me was really pretty simple. I came in and met with Darren the first time. Just kind of, he showed me around the office, just kind of asked what I was kind of looking for out of the boot camp. And that was just really him getting to kind of know the boot campers, see, what they were kind of looking for, what he was kind of looking for. And then the next interview, I met with both Darren and Ben, both of the ownerships. And that meeting was a little bit more of, okay, what are you kind of looking for price wise, hours? It was more of a detailed conversation about, we're kind of looking into bringing you on, what's going to be the price point to get you at. The negotiation is really just about knowing your worth. Like if you're confident, you can come in and run through things, actually put tasks out, get things done that they're asking you to get done. I would negotiate for what you think your value is. For me, I just wanted to break into the industry. I really liked the company where I was, where I have a sports background, and getting into coding I knew that they were going to split me 50-50 with the testing and the development at first. So that really allowed me to kind of learn their code base by testing it as well as developing in it. So I didn't do as much negotiating with my getting hired on, but again, that was just because I really liked the company and it was a place that I wanted to grow with. So I knew the negotiations would come kind of down the road. But again, it's kind of person to person. Like if you think you're capable of coming in, because that's what's going to come down to at the end of the day. Like the number you tell them is going to be what they're going to look at on your kind of what you produce. Like if you're pushing out, new tasks, new updates day after day, not getting a whole lot of bug issues, I wouldn't see any problem with asking for whatever you think. But for me, it was more of I liked the company, so I was going to go with. I kind of gave them a ballpark number, but I wasn't going to push back too much on that first negotiation.
And was that the primary company you were looking at to begin with, or did you anything else you were looking at also?
There was a few different ones that I was looking at. I really liked that they did the sports streaming, but I also I talked with Apex there at Awesome Inc., as well as Nimble Services and Gray Solutions. So I talked to a few different people, but I just came down to meeting with Darren and Ben after talking with them and kind of seeing their direction for the company and what they really thought of. This is really just a way to help smaller colleges get exposure out there that these big colleges have because they have the money to back it. But yeah, I definitely met with a few different people. It just comes down to it's not so much about the money as it is the fit. I think if you find a place that you think you can fit in at, you can grow from there, and then the money will come in time as you grow as a developer. But the first job, I think, is definitely finding a place where you think you can learn and grow and give a good environment for you, and not somewhere that's going to force you to grow too quickly and make a bunch of mistakes and not have that time to kind of learn a little bit more. Because once you get out of the boot camp, it's still quite a bit of learning.
Yeah, I think that's good, and that's a really imperative thought there, is that to go somewhere where you're going to have the opportunity to grow and know that that's what you're there to do, is to grow.
Yep, that's another thing. Back to the interview process is kind of I would definitely ask your interviewer what their kind of plan is, or what they're kind of seeing for you, if they have a roadmap for where you'd like to grow to. That was another question that I had asked, was if there was a roadmap. Like, I know I'm starting 50-50 dev QA, but does it eventually just go to me developing more full time and things like that? Which was the response was, we'll get you in here, see what you can do. If you keep proving yourself, you'll get more tasks on the development side. So that is definitely a big question to ask during the interview process.
What was it like as soon as you got out of the boot camp, when it was in between being hired and still in, just out of the boot camp? Did you have any objectives that you wanted to achieve, and did you achieve those?
Immediately after the boot camp, I was playing around with a bunch of different frameworks. I had looked into kind of teaching myself some new stuff, and I did manage to teach myself not complete new languages, but I tried to. The companies that I was looking at, I would ask what they would deal in, and so I'd look and try to teach myself at least a small part, maybe do a hello world of some of these things. And I was lucky enough to build a couple of those before getting hired on, and then it kind of helped when I got here because I already had a little bit of knowledge of what I was getting into. But it is a kind of strange time where you just got done learning all this stuff. You've built things, you've broke things, and you're kind of in the mode of, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to find a job doing this, but you never really know completely what you're doing. So that struggle of, I know I just learned a whole lot, but trying to teach yourself to learn some more, learning some more after the boot camp, like until you get that job to focus more learning on, is kind of definitely beneficial to get you along the road. Don't stop coding after the boot camp. Like, take a small break if you need to, but at least maybe do a little bit here and there just to keep you fresh, because getting that code and dealing with it every day is really going to help as you move forward.
Colby, what were your emotions like as you went through boot camp? Was it just like smooth sailing straight on through, or did you ever hit any roadblocks?
Oh, there was I wouldn't say smooth sailing straight on through. There's definitely some times where it got frustrating. You know, I didn't know what I got myself into at times. You'd get to a point where, and it could sometimes be something as a silly mistake where you've got some little incorrect syntax error, maybe a comma where it shouldn't be, and trying to find those things will frustrate you. But going through it, like once you find the solution for those things, it's just such a great feeling. Like it's so many ups and downs, and there's always the kind of the impersonation thing that you think of yourself, like, do I really know what I'm doing? But it's just one of those, it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be something that's going to kind of stick with you, and it's just rubber ducky with somebody, talking with them. Don't get too down on yourself, because nobody's going to know everything about everything. So if you can't Google it, if you can't kind of figure it out on your own, I would suggest reaching out to somebody. I have some friends who are developers that I reach out to at times when I have questions. Reach out to my team members here. So there's always going to be a way to get around things. Just don't get too down on yourself most of the time. I did it occasionally, still do at times. So it's not something that's going to go away. But it's definitely ups and downs. Some days you're going to be on top of the world, coding through, boom, push stuff out. It works immediately. Great day. Then there's other times where push something up, worked completely fine in your local environment, gets to push out to deployment and just fails completely, and you're just scrambling to try to figure out what's going on, you know. And it's a little frustrating at times, but it's not too terrible as long as you kind of, you know that you know what you know, and it's just getting it out of your head.
Very cool. Thanks.
I've got a question. So after you got out of boot camp, how did you balance looking for a job versus all of the learning that you were trying to do to keep up your skills, learn new skills, versus boot camp is exhausting. Of course, you're going to need to do something to recover. How did you deal with those three things together?
It is a lot to deal with at one time. I made sure that I kind of did relax some. I didn't do as much learning after the boot camp. It was more of here and there when I had some free time, kind of digging into something that I wanted to learn. I made it more about what I would like to do instead of what I needed to do, which the boot camp, you know, is more of a structured, like, here's what we're going to learn, hit when and where. But after the boot camp, it's more of, if you like to read books and things, it's kind of like, oh, just pick up a book that you want to try, instead of it's pick up a language that you think you might be fun to play around in. So it's more playing around with languages than it is teaching yourself a language. But I concentrate a lot on kind of the job search of reaching out to people, kind of networking. I know there's some, with COVID going on, there's not a lot of events going on, but some Slack groups to join, the Bluegrass Developers Guild, startup Slack channels, things like that. There's always people having discussions, kind of getting in there and talking with those people. It's just trying to make it not so much like I have to do this. It's a task that I have to get done, more of getting the mindset of, I just went through this boot camp. I enjoy this new career that I've jumped into. Making it more of an enjoyable thing kind of helps manage all three of those things together. If you try to enjoy yourself as much as you can, which is tough at times considering the boot camp is so taxing of how much work you put into it. But it gets more and more fun as you dig into it. At least I think so.
Cool. Any other questions today for Colby?
I just think he did a great job of answering them initially before we even asked. So yeah, kudos on that. Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to take our questions.
Thank you all for listening. With COVID going on, I haven't had as much time to talk, and I'm much of a talker. So as long as anybody's listening, I'll talk.
Oh, I meant to ask one last thing.
Okay.
So imagine you guys transitioned into remote positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So has it pretty smooth for you, or how's that going?
Most of us kind of worked from home. Here we're kind of they gave us the option to work from home if we wanted to, but we kind of fit the criteria for staying open during COVID. We're a media company. We had less than 10 people in a room at a time. We stayed 6 feet away from each other in our office. So I worked mostly in the office, but when I do work from home, it's not too much of a transition as long as you go in with the focus of this is work time. Try to limit the distractions as much as you can at the house. But remote sometimes actually beneficial because you kind of block out the distractions of work. Helps you to kind of dig into the problem without outside eyes looking at it, or if you're working on another project with somebody else and you needed to get something you needed done, where I'm in both test and development. Testing will kind of distract me from time to time if I'm trying to get something done development wise. So working from home without all the testing equipment, all of our cameras and devices, it's just kind of, okay, I can ignore testing for today. Let me dig into just my computer, my code. And so it's kind of a balancing act of making sure you keep up with your workday when you're not at the office.
Yeah, and we've definitely had some experience with that now for the boot camp.
Oh, I would say.
Yeah. And so my follow-up question, pretty much just sounds like the generic interview question, but at your company, you may have already answered it, I'm not sure, but at your company, what was the biggest challenge that you faced so far, coding-wise, or I guess communication-wise, and how did you resolve that? So I can take some lessons on what to do once the job comes.
I would say probably the biggest issue I've had since I've been here is it's actually with the project I'm working on now, and with it I've kind of just been rolling through things, but I'm dealing with a code base that is kind of built by somebody else, and I'm just trying to build off of what they initially built, and that person is no longer here. So it's kind of just nobody here knows exactly how it was built, and it's working through what you know versus talking with other people. And it's just, you got to kind of get into the environment. Once you're there, it's kind of know who your point of contact is, know who to go to if you have an issue, know kind of how the company likes to handle things. Like for us right now, my issue is my local environment's not throwing any sort of errors. As soon as I push my code up to go to our production or something, it's throwing errors up there. So it's mostly kind of syntax things and stuff that I just didn't catch, silly mistakes. And it's more of a getting kind of mad at yourself of, this is frustrating that local host isn't finding it versus when you're pushing it up, and then debugging based off of something not failing that is failing elsewhere. And that's when you just kind of speak with one of the more senior devs, be like, hey, I'm not as seasoned in this. This may be something that's, common sense for you guys, but can you take a look at this and see if anything stands out to you that would be causing these issues? Like I said, for me, it's been really nice. This company's been very easy to talk to. Lots of open lanes of communication, lots of help from any direction you kind of go in. And that's going to be the main thing, is finding who your main help is going to be, and asking them, like, not too many questions, but making sure that you've exhausted all of your options that personally, until you kind of reach out, and then kind of have kind of, when you ask your question, know what's going on. If you have like an error code or an exception, kind of say, hey, this is what's going on, explain how you tried to kind of fix it. And sometimes the senior dev will, just by listening to what you said, have a fix in mind and tell you, hey, why don't you try this? And then that'll almost work almost immediately most times.
All right, I don't know if you've been asked this one yet, but either at work or as a personal project, what's the coolest thing you've worked on, in your opinion?
The coolest thing I've worked on. I'd have to say the most fun that I've had is I recently just implemented, well, I didn't implement, but I expanded on one of our CMS options. We have a way to bulk schedule is what it's called, and you will create a bunch of different broadcasts based on two criteria. We have a kind of field for defaults, which will be applied to every broadcast. And then each individual component of that is a broadcast itself, which you can set add to default options to transfer over each individual broadcast, and then have each individual broadcast for the kind of that are not set as a default. And dealing with our CMS is pretty extensive because nothing is in the same place. We have, for a broadcast, you'll have anywhere from 3 to 4 relational tables that could have relational tables involved. So I say it's fun, but I enjoy like digging through objects, pulling out what you need from each object and stuff. But once you get in, it's going to be anything's kind of going to be exciting once you kind of build stuff and see what you're building and know where it's going to. Because me building that solution, now these kind of parks who don't have the time can just sit there. Everything that stays the same can stay the same and do like 10 broadcasts at a time in no time, instead of having to individually make this one, this one, this one, this one. And even though you're making it mostly the same, now it's an option of I can do this in 5 minutes versus 20 minutes of doing it one by one.
This may seem like a weird question, but I feel like when we first start learning things, we kind of get a general idea of how it works, and then we have to apply it in an actual project. And so far, I've been counting that as sort of like real life learning versus just hypothetical learning. But right now, it is occurring to me that what we're doing in the boot camp, it's all for just our own kind of projects that are for the boot camp. It's not like someone in real life out there is currently trying to get these things working. So is there a big transition from just the nature of working on your own project versus working on something that's like genuinely important that a lot of people are counting on working? You know what I mean? Like, is there a lot of more pressure, et cetera?
There's pressure at times, but it's more just kind of pressure that you put on yourself. For us, the client's not going to know about these things until it's released. So in the back of your head, you're kind of like, I want to get this out so that it can start being used. I really need to get this bug fix in. But most of the time, these things aren't going to get kind of exposed to the outside user just yet. So there's not as much pressure in that sense. Deadlines are kind of given when they do occur. For us, we don't have a lot of deadlines, but sometimes we will, mostly from our partners. If they request a feature or they request something to be built, they will put a deadline on it. And then you're working within the team. Like I said earlier, for me, I'm working mostly as the CMS team. So I build everything on our content management side that is used then by our automated production team. And so it's a lot of contact back and forth, but most of the pressure comes from what you put on yourself, at least in my experience. But it's still just gonna be like you're working on something personally. At least it feels that way for me. A lot of the time we kind of componentize things for us. Like a bug fix is only going to affect maybe one component on one page or something like that. So what you're working on is kind of your own at that point, because you've got your local environment set up. You're the one testing locally. You're the one who's building that. So again, it's just one of those things of making sure you don't put too much pressure on yourself when you do that kind of thing.
Cool. So, is it still true that discomfort is a desired state even as you're working?
Big time. That is very true. If you're uncomfortable about something, that means you're learning something. For me, it's right now. I was just thinking earlier. I was like, I just pushed a new update to a branch, and I was like, "Oh, I hope this works." So that uncomfortability was kind of a backup for me to let me review this a little bit more just in case it fails, so that I can see where a potential issue might be. So uncomfortability is definitely desired.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Colby, if anyone from the call here wants to follow up with you afterwards, ask any other questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can either get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or you can give them my email address. I'll try to reply as quickly as I can on there. I usually will try to reply within a day to my emails on there. My personal email kind of gets backed up with work stuff usually, but yeah. If you want to give anybody my contact information, I'm willing to answer any questions that they need. I'm available anytime usually.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us. This is super helpful. It's good for me to get a nice little update on your progress over the course of the last year. Really cool to see, how even in just a year, the work that you're doing has progressed. So yeah, really appreciate that, and best of luck to you all at BlueFrame. I think we now have 3 of our bootcamp alumni.
There's 2 here now.
2, okay.
Yep. Sam Wheeler's here. Sam Moore, I think, went to KET.
Right. And then is Connor still
Connor, there? No, he recently left to do some work with his dad on the farm or something, I think. He just recently left the company, though.
Very cool. Yeah, but I know it's been pretty cool to see multiple people from the boot camp.
Oh yeah.
Go through there and definitely see your all's team grow. So that's really cool.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool to have somebody else from the boot camp. Me and Sam Wheeling actually, share experiences from the boot camp. Like we kind of, where we both came from the same background, kind of bounce questions off of each other because we know kind of how the other thinks based off of kind of how we were taught.
Yeah. In a talking contest, I think the 2 of you could keep up with each other pretty well.
Yeah, that's usually a little bit of distraction for us. We usually have to put some headphones in and just block each other out, or else we'll just talk most of the day about stuff.
That's pretty cool. All right, folks. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us on here. I'll send out Colby's contact info, your LinkedIn, and your email. I really appreciate you being willing to answer some other questions. But yeah, again, super helpful. Thank you for joining us, and best of luck as you continue growing in your career.
All right, thank you all.
Good to see you, Colby.
See you, everybody.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye.